All right, hey, welcome back to the show. I'm Great Grandpa Phoebe. I'm here with my good friend, Ryan Gillespie. We just met a few minutes ago, but I feel like we connect. We're talking about electric bikes today, right? At least one of the things.
Yeah, electric bikes, solar bikes.
You make a plethora of interesting shapes and wooden desks and guitars and...
Yeah, I like to make parts.
Yeah.
So I started out just doing e-bike repairs, and then I started to bridge into the custom work and more new sales of e-bikes and more repairs. And I do enjoy making components. And one day I want to build my own bike too, and I built a few bamboo bikes, and we'll talk about that also.
Yeah.
That's kind of the original inspiration for wanting to start the company. But now we do a bunch of things in the e-bike industry that other companies do also. But I enjoy making parts. I made this table. I'm working on a guitar. I've also just made some small wood insert parts for different carts and like the elf. Make a wooden floor for the elf. I make plastic parts like elf windows.
And this is an elf right here.
Oh, that's an elf. That's an elf. And
for people who don't know, there's like a bunch of them parked back here. I've seen probably around 20 or 30 of them today, I think.
This is like ground zero for the elf right now. I mean, they were made in Durham from 2013 to 2019-ish. I don't know if they made it in 2019.
I was going to say, they make them down in North Carolina, and I'm like, wait a minute, we're in North Carolina right now.
Yeah. That explains why there's so many here. So the original company was in Durham, and they went bankrupt. And so I worked for them before they went bankrupt, so I knew how to build the elf. So when they went bankrupt, I was talking with the old owners, and they were like asking something about my computer or whatever. But I said, hey, you can put my name into the Elf repair page on Facebook, or the Elf page on Facebook. If anybody wants a repair, they could come to my shop. And I didn't realize how many people needed repairs. They didn't do repairs at Organic Transit unless you twisted their ear really hard and kind of like made a big deal about it. Like they didn't really do a lot of repairs. So I had more than enough different people wanting their elves refurbished since then.
If
to
you're
put me in more than enough business to continue to do it.
That's fantastic, though. I mean, in some respects, it's great, right?
It's been really good. It's got its ups and downs. The elves, they take a really long time to actually repair. It's one of the reasons they didn't like doing it is because it's hard to be profitable with it. I could charge the customer $3,000 or $4,000 for what I'm doing and still struggle to make a profit from it.
And like you were saying, it needs a complete redesign too, right?
I would say so. We can pretty much fix it and get it back on the road, but what it really needs is it really, really needs suspension, and it really needs. I really just think you need to start there. It really just. Not all bikes need suspension, but I think by the time you have a 160 to 200 pound bike with a plastic body that moves around, and this, personally, I think when there's excess vibrations on the road, it causes the solar cells to crack prematurely.
Oh, wow.
And that's something that your solar panel will last a lot longer if you have a vehicle with full suspension than if you don't. And I know that from not only from driving the Elf, their panels go bad after only a year or two. But then also going on the Sun trip, I got to talk with a lot of people, and I'm not the only person who thinks that the more suspension you have on your bike, the longer your solar panels are probably going to last. So
I find too that I drove them around a little bit. I always felt like I could never keep up with traffic, and it felt too big to be on the side of the road, but not fast enough to be in the road. At the same time.
Yeah, if you ever heard of the Jurgensen brothers who make the box beam or the grid beam, so they always said that if you prototype vehicles, if you make it wide enough to take up a whole lane, you have to make it fast enough to keep up.
And
then if it's too slow to keep up, then you need to make it a narrow track on the side of the road so that people can go around you. Because if people can't go around then you're going to get hit eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
So the Elf is really weird in that, yes, I agree, it's a little wide. I think if I designed something similar, it might be like 3 feet wide instead of 4. 49 or 50 inches. It's 2 inches. It's like 1 inch too wide to fit through my shop door. So we have to use a loading bay. But I would do it narrower.
And it's not an off-road vehicle, like you're saying. No suspension. So it's like if you're panicking
it's only enjoyable on the smooth roads. It is not enjoyable to drive on the bumpies.
And in town, I would say too.
Especially my road is incredibly bumpy. It's just all the way in. So it makes a lot of noise when you're enclosed. But they're good concept. The one thing I'll say about the driving is on a regular bike, people give you like this much space.
Yeah.
I've had one time I had a guy get out of his car and try to fight me because he was mad that I was mad that he didn't give me enough space. And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, you already tried to kill me once. Now you're gonna do it again?" And so, but the thing with the Elf is the people they're disarmed. They're less of a dick because it's goofy looking. So instead of being antagonized by your presence on the road, they're just like, "Oh, look at this dork," and they give you a bunch of space. They think it's a golf cart. They think there might be an old person in it.
There's a novelty spell that overcomes their senses.
They get they're too curious to be a dick, which is kind of cool. It's actually a nice thing. Because that really gets old when you're on a regular bike.
That's the way it was with the King Midgets too. Are you familiar with the old?
Your dad was telling me about it.
Yeah,
because he's the one that does support on them, right?
Yeah. Like, they made them back in the 50s and 60s.
Specific thing.
Athens, Ohio. That's where they came from.
Okay.
And they're similar in size, I would say.
Okay.
You know, just a little bit longer and a little bit like more square.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like a flat out Jeep looking golf cart. You know,
those are really interesting. I remember him showing me all kinds of parts that you guys were making for it.
Yeah, same type of novelty effect comes over people though.
Yeah.
For sure.
You drive it up and people just want to know what it is.
And if you were in Norwalk, you might know this organic transit from the Energy Bash Solar Music Festival that we had one year, where we took it out there and had kids drive it around and stuff. You know, it was kind of a good time. But yeah, man, really interesting things happening here. You're converting a school bus into like a mobile bike shop, basically, right? That drives up to your loading dock, like perfectly.
I couldn't. You couldn't pay $1 million to get that lucky, right? So I bought a school bus. It was really inexpensive. I ended up having to do some engine work on it to get it working, but it runs really nice. It's a 35-foot Thomas safety liner from '98.
Yeah.
And it's got a rear engine Caterpillar 3126.
Got it for a song from a school.
Yeah, I spent $2,000 on it at the Forsyth County school bus, wherever they've serviced the school buses for the county. And they were like, "Yeah, one of them's junk, but the other one drives great." So I go, whenever he's like,
"Well, drive the great one."
It was so funny. He's like, "You ever driven a Thomas Pusher before?" And I was like, "Ooh," and I thought back, and I worked for this guy named Hal, who owns Segway of the Triad.
Hal 9000.
Yeah, his name is Hal Boyle, and he had Segway of the Triad, and it was now it's Pedigo of the Piedmont Triad, and he's got this company called Triad Trolleys.
Yeah.
And when he first bought the trolleys, he hired me out on an odd job to restore the interior of the trolleys, and I ended up just refinishing all the wood slat seats. So I had this second where I had a flashback, and I thought back to it, and I remembered that I think it even has the same engine. It's definitely a Thomas Pusher from the late 90s. And I said, "Sir, I think I have driven one of these before." And I drove it off the lot, and I drove it home, and just like the trolley, it was really funny. It was just kind of small world type of thing. But I decided I wanted to get a school bus because it was time for us to grow up a little bit and have a retail space. Up until now, I mostly have maintained more of a workshop.
Yeah.
And yes, I do meet customers there, and we work on bikes. We do CNC projects. We do bike repair, even some battery work and some other things. But it's just not like a super hospitable place to be meeting customers. You know, we don't have like a super nice area to make coffee or like have a nice display with all of our bikes or anything like that.
It's just a giant cave, basically.
It's 80,000 square foot building.
It's an amazing building,
with
honestly.
Like a bunch of tools, and it's amazing for like an e-bike nerd, but it's
for a factory floor.
It's excellent. You know, it's anything. You know, I could see us building frames there. I could see us having like many CNC machines there one day.
Yeah,
I only
exactly.
rent a small portion of the machine, but through my business partners, I manage about 9,000 square feet right now, and I think that top floor is 30,000 square feet.
Okay.
You know,
damn.
If it's great. A lot of startups have the problem where they don't have a great way to scale. Like they're going from their garage, and then they're like have to go up to a shop, which might be really expensive.
So you're doing the opposite, basically.
Or they might they might have a little shop that's like $1,000 a month, and then they have to stretch to a $4,000 a month shop, and it's like that hurts. And I wasn't ready to do that. I found an excellent deal on a really nice place downtown that would have been great visibility. It was still like $1,500 a month, and I was just, that's not really a lot of money for what I was getting, but it was like a whole lot more than I'm paying right now.
Yeah.
And how could I get 85% or more of like what I was missing right now in my retail experience, but also not have to get stuck in a 5 or 10 year lease paying $1,500 a month when I could be paying $0 a month to show up in my bus to where the customers told me they already are. So instead of opening my e-bike shop in Winston-Salem on a Tuesday at 10 in the morning,
get yourself
and
out.
Waiting 3 hours for someone to wake up and come in my shop, because man, in the off season in Winston-Salem, it's a pretty sleepy town. You know, this is not Atlanta where I'm from. It is like,
it gets cold.
It can be waves of a lot of activity, but then there's periods where the bike shops are, like January, February, March. They're not that busy, so it's pretty seasonal. And if I want to gear my bike business that is primarily online already around the seasonal nature of the business, I want to have some appointments maybe and have the bus show up for a day, not only in the right location for customers, but in the right location to test these bikes.
Yeah.
Because yes, you can come into my shop downtown and ride the bike a half a mile downtown. That's great. Well, what if?
I mean, where they are, where they're living, where they're going to use the bike.
What if you met us in a parking lot in your town, in like Hickory or Charlotte or Durham?
Kind of lay of the land.
Yeah. So you meet us at your farmers market area on like a Thursday, and there's nobody there because it's just a big parking lot. Meet us there. Try out our Steintrag. Try out our solar bikes. Try them out in your area.
Plus, it puts you out in the public, and like you kind of like, I don't know, you get just attention that way too. You got a giant bus and a bunch of electric bikes, and like people
that was
are
unintended. So then he's talked about how lucky I got with it. So yes, it's very far from finished. It's pretty utilitarian to have a big school bus, but it's still rough around the edges. It's not painted or anything, but it is excellent. For visibility. So one of the things is I cut a big hole in the side of it so we could fit elves inside, and then that was the reason.
These electric bikes.
It's a pusher. You can't put a hole in the back of the door, in the back of the bus. So then we cut it out the door. I cut the door out, and I drove it up to the warehouse. I said, "Man, what are the chances that this bus is going to just drive right up to the loading bay, and we can just put the ramp out?" So I drove it up around the telephone pole. Sure enough, the bus rolled right up to the loading bay.
Like a glove, man.
And I could put the big receiving ramp right down, and we could roll our trikes in and out, and my bus just became an extension of the warehouse. It's just like
it's like a moving platform.
Yeah, it's like a moving entryway into our company. It's really excellent. And
you pick people up at the bus stop and take them to your shop.
Yes. And the bus stop's
Who needs
so
a bike?
close. So the funniest thing is if you with the elf, you can ride it down the street and get a lot of attention. But I'll tell you what, driving that school bus with a hole in it, like down the highway or something. Or
I was following you downtown, man.
People's heads turn like crazy.
We're in
people yell at me.
Winston-Salem right now.
Stuff.
Yeah. People are all like, "What is going on over here?"
One time someone called the cops because they said there was a bus accident. They saw my bus.
It does look like something is wrong. Something is amiss. This bus doesn't have a side on it. There's just wires jutting out. Like, it looks like an electrical fire about to happen.
Yeah, when I got it inspected, apparently the guy was like, "I can't pass that." And the other guy was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, they got a hole in the body bigger than a dime. That's how you fail the inspection." And he was like, "It's a door. It's a door that's open."
Right. Yeah.
I told him I have a door for it.
Yeah. Right.
And so, and then he was
not
like,
on there.
Whatever, I'll pass it. It was great.
Nice.
It was.
I always find a lot of laid back people in Carolina.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I like it here.
It is great.
It's a little back asswards, but it's really laid back.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Everyone has its upsides and downsides, but. So I like to think about things. So like we're talking a lot about the actual like physically making bikes, fabrication, selling bikes, getting people into the idea of it. Now in that world, like I assume most people like know about electric bikes, or are you like educating a lot of people on stuff? Or
I don't know. I think if you look at a bell curve, like the 4 types of people, there's like inventors, and then there's early adopters, and then there's the mass market, and then there's the stubborn people at the end, right?
Okay, right.
And so e-bikes up until recently, they have been in inventor status, like innovators, people in endless sphere who buy a mountain bike and then they buy like an alternator from the junkyard, and then they like weld a bunch of cell phone batteries together, and then they ride it until they have to throw it in the lake because the battery shorted out or something.
Or it's on fire.
That's where it came from, to be honest. There's this guy online, like years ago, he built this e-bike called the Dogati.
Okay.
It's like a Ducati except it's made in his garage, and it's like a dog. It goes like a dog, so he calls it the Dogati instead of the Ducati, and it's super nice, you know.
Dogati.
That's the kind of innovation that I was attracted to when I got into e-bikes in 2015. There's already lots of e-bikes out there on the market. Yeah. They're generally being purchased by what I would say early adopters. Yeah. So
that's a good call. That's a good framework.
So
even like a small bike shop in my small town in Ohio has e-bikes, you know what I mean?
Now they do.
Yeah, they do now.
And
sure.
Say when I first started looking at e-bikes or being curious, I was curious about e-bikes, you know, for a long time before 2015, which is when I built my first one. But I never did it because the batteries. I kept hearing the batteries were expensive and they're going to get better, so I just kind of waited out. I did a gas bike once. Yeah. And then I just got into electric when I went to App State, and I just started. I did one e-bike, led to another, and I did like 5 more. And then I really wanted to work in the industry.
And the batteries are a lot better than they used to be too.
Yeah, just another thing. 2015 to now, solar panels cost like. Often you could spend twice as much or more as they do now. And same with the batteries.
Dropping
the batteries
by half.
now are so much better. When I do a rebuild on people's bikes, a lot of times I put like twice or 2.5 times the capacity back in it as what they had before in the same size case. And that's like, I'm replacing old lithium cells with new lithium cells. That's amazing. They're cheaper than ever every day.
Even you're talking about the time span from the city car from the 70s and replacing the battery from like a 800 to 1,000 pound battery to like 80 pounds.
All right, so I have a 76 city car. It's red. It's totally junked out, but it actually does drive. And one of my friends in Triad Electric Vehicle Association, Ken, gave me the Green Cycle Design Group. He gave me a big battery. It's like a 9 kilowatt hour battery. He said the BMS was toasted, so nobody ever used it. I said, are you seriously giving me a brand new 9 kilowatt hour battery that just doesn't have a BMS? Well, I'll figure that out. So I got a 500 amp 48 volt BMS. I got a Ultrax 72 500 controller. So yeah, I can pull 500 amps. I don't think I should, but I'll probably roast the motor. But I got the motor working on the Ultrax, and I got the only thing.
So that's the original
that car
motor
needs
then.
Brakes. Oh yeah, I got the original motor.
Okay.
And
nice.
it's got a transfer case at the back and everything.
Hell yeah.
And I'm really excited about the city car, man. It's that's what I would call a rusted mod. Oh yeah, to your point about the batteries, I think the batteries originally weighed like somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 to 800 pounds in the city car. Yeah. In later city cars, they even added more battery boxes on the front and the back, which that forced them to, like, when they got into an accident, they would spin because they had so much weight in the front and the back.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember the battery packs are right behind the bumper, basically.
On the older city cars, they are, because they didn't have enough space in the early ones. Okay. So the early city cars just had the batteries under the seat like a golf cart, because they're very similar to golf carts. But what I'm doing is I'm taking this 80 pound or 90 pound lithium battery pack that's almost 10 kilowatt hours. I think it's like 8 or 9 kilowatt hours based on the rating of the cells. And it's 80 or 90 pounds.
So 800 pounds to 80 pounds, essentially. Yes. Like that's enormous.
I'm losing like 600 or 700 pounds off the batteries, and I've read online and heard from some city car people that's going to make a big impact on acceleration. Especially having the Ultrax controller, it's going to be way smoother than using their old contactor box. It's just crazy to me that in 2022 someone gave me a vehicle that used to run a contactor box. It's ridiculous, but hey.
That is, yeah. I remember I rode around in a few of the old ones.
Really?
Yeah, and like,
is it jerky and stuff?
It is, but like you're saying, the acceleration, like you can hear the hum go, zzz, just like, was it? And like, you're like, okay, we're about to go. Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. And bum rush the amps out of the lead acid battery. And just that's what I heard it was like.
Yeah.
So I didn't want mine to drive like that.
It was intense for sure. I mean, it was quiet, but it felt like it was about to explode at any minute. You know, like.
That's funny. Yeah, I rode a couple bikes like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny.
Yeah. So all right. So I'm shifting into like another space now too. Like as far as the cultural shift, right? Like as far as people like early adopters, right? Like are already here. There's a lot of e-bikes being sold right now. Everybody knows about them. You know. As far as like gasoline is going to be out in like 47 years. By like 2069, we're at fresh out.
That's very specific.
Right.
It's around, at some point that's.
I mean, it's good to keep in mind dates, because we'll probably still be alive, maybe or maybe not. Who knows? But like, that's definitely like within possibility of our lifetime.
Well, that's the thing. Our prediction for peak oil was changed because we were already supposed to have passed it, except for then they just started doing a lot more fracking.
Yeah.
And that's actually what pushed back the predicted date of peak oil, which now we haven't hit it yet. The only country that's experienced is Cuba.
And it's like, I don't even know how many billions of barrels that we use every day, but it's a lot.
Too many.
Yeah. It's an enormous amount, and people just take it for granted, and people just like, I don't think the large majority of the population really like understands the transition that's about to happen, because regardless of if they want it to happen or not.
The other weird thing is how much will it affect them? If one day, 15 years from now, say you might be more likely to see an electric car than a gas one. There might be tons of gas cars out on the road still.
Yeah.
But somebody showed me a slideshow once that said in New York City they went from horses to basically all automobiles in 8 years.
Yeah.
And if they could do that in the early turn of the century in 8 years, then I would expect the same with these cars, even faster.
Oh, definitely.
Because if it comes to the point where it makes more sense, then you might see in New York today that's 99% gas cars or close, and then 15 years from now it might be 85% electric cars.
Or even,
and those people, they might not notice a whole lot of the difference. They might go from putting gas in their thing to putting plug in their thing.
That's true.
And a lot of people, me included, if I wasn't into e-bikes, it might not make a big difference on my life. But that, the feel of your car and maybe driving a smaller car, maybe doing a car share instead of owning one, all those things, if they hurt the consumer, unfortunately, they might not be accepted. So that's why people are engineering all these things to make it if it's pleasing to the consumer.
If it doesn't change the way people are living their lives, then people will adopt it quicker.
Yes, unfortunately. Because the people who are going to change their life to make a difference, they're doing that. Yeah. It's trying.
That's true.
And it's an unfortunate truth, but hey, if we can get smart and make it attractive, then we'll see the changes that we want.
And then along with that, we're going to probably have automated cars, especially like in cities. Like if you're talking New York City, you're talking like most people probably don't even own cars anyway, Yeah. And so, like, the taxis are just going to transition over to fleets of automated.
You know what you see in New York City now?
Oh, yeah.
Electric bikes.
Okay.
Out the ass.
Yeah, I bet.
Because during the coronavirus, I would say that the coronavirus marks the point where e-bikes are going from being purchased by early adopters to being purchased by the mass market.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the push the industry has been waiting for. It kind of sucks why it happened. And many industries have been hurting, and of course, I'm not even counting the humanitarian crisis and everything like that.
Right.
But there's certain industries that have really been doing well. I know outdoor recreation is some aspects of that are doing really well. But the electric bike industry, this is exactly what it needed. It needed people to be understimulated. It needed people to have a little bit of extra money. It needed them to be motivated and want to make a psychological change in their life. Those are the things that the industry needed. And I wish there was a better way to take a cattle prod and push people to make the right changes. But hey, you know what? If we don't make these changes, you're going to see a whole lot worse than these viruses and stuff.
That's true.
And
it's a paradigm.
Stability and stuff like that. we're gonna keep kicking our own population in its own ass if we don't make these changes that the universe is like politely telling us to make. It's gonna start getting less polite. Is all I'm saying.
That's true.
It's starting to be honest.
Yeah, it's gonna start. There's pushback in nature when we're not living in tune with like it sounds kind of esoteric to say it, but like as far as like living in tune with nature, like it's a real thing though. I mean, like we've been fighting against nature like the entire existence of humanity, essentially. You know, because
really
nature just tries to kill us nonstop all the time.
Does it though? Or are we trying to go upstream?
Right.
And it's like, oh, nature tried to kill me.
So we gotta kill it
well,
back.
what were you trying to do to nature first?
That's
true,
too.
I cut a bunch of trees down so I could make paper. It's like, really? Then what are you expecting?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, just as far as like, you know, bears and wolves and lions and things of that nature, or just natural disasters in general, I guess. We're trying to build shelters and we're trying to build safe spaces for ourselves. We built these like, you know, cars are almost so like, I don't know, just bubbles that we just feel safe in, you know, in a large aspect, especially if like we're going camping or if we're like, you know, out in the wilderness. Like when we're placed in nature, like we're outside. Most people are outside of their comfort zone.
And that's the thing. Say you're riding a two-wheeled e-bike. Yeah, you're in it, and people want that experience. But then, driving a car is different. You feel like you're not you're protected. So that's what's so interesting about stuff like the Elf is because you get that car-like experience that the whole world is addicted to. My friend in France was telling me. I was telling him, man, I wish we had more diesel cars like you guys do. And he goes, no, you don't. The particulars are so much worse. Like, you're right. And I was like, well, Europeans are less inclined to be driving a single occupancy automobile. And he was like, honestly, Europeans are just as addicted to single occupancy automobile use as Americans are.
Yeah. And
in order for us to see the change we wanted, you're never going to see the concept of the personal automobile go away. You just need to get smarter about it. The vehicles that people drive, if you are always going to drive it by yourself, it really only needs 1 or 2 seats. You should own a vehicle that doesn't have 7 seats. If you drive it by yourself, more than 85% of the time, you go to work, maybe pick some groceries up. You don't need a big. You don't. If you're going on a mile down the street at your home, you might not take your big, nice Ford Ranger. You might take one of your dad's goofy little electric bikes to go a mile down the street because that's what that's for.
Exactly.
I like my school bus. I bought it for business, and I pick up materials with it. But as soon as I get to the city that I'm going to, whether it's Winston Salem or any other city, I park that thing. I get the bikes out because that's what it's good at, you know.
And it's a conversation that's been going on since the 50s at least. I know, like back when they had the huge steel buckets, 2-ton cars. And like I remember I read some articles in like an old Popular Mechanics that talked about how it was an article about king midgets. That's why I was reading it, you know.
Okay.
And like he went on about like, well, you know, like the normal housewife drives down to the grocery store to pick up a lipstick for, you know, like in this gigantic car, like 2 miles and back, and it's like a waste of a lot of resources, essentially.
And our modern habits with that, they started after World War II. And they started, the average American's home size was like 950 square feet, or like 1,100 square feet in the 1950s. And every year it goes...
It's like killing a mosquito with a flamethrower. It's just overkill.
It's the average new home construction in the U.S. was around 1,000 square feet or under after World War II. And in the 90s and the 2000s, they got up to 2,300 square feet.
Wow.
For the average new home. That's the average. That's
2,300. So wait, it's from what to what now? Where are the numbers?
So in the 1950s, after World War II, the average square footage of a home that was new construction, it was like 900 to 1,100 square feet. It wasn't that. It was around the size of my house, actually.
Yeah,
my house is like 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, I remember my grandparents' house was about this size.
Yeah, and this is 100 years old, by the way. It's a 1920 house. 1922 was when my house was built.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you need, you know, mainly.
You know? Like, it feels smaller than other houses I've lived in, but I have everything I need and more here. I cannot imagine anything that I don't need, that I don't have here.
Exactly.
Except for maybe another bathroom, but that's
then
just a preference
they're
thing.
basically
I don't really need one.
they're doubling the size essentially.
Yes. The average new home construction went from where we are now to 2,300 square feet is the average. So that means there's so many people out there building 1,500 square foot houses, and there's so many people out there building 5,000 square foot McMansions because they think they want that. I kind of know why they think they want that, but I don't think they want that. I just watched a great TED Talk about McMansions, and this really opinionated architect from Seattle. She was talking mad shit about them. It was great.
I bet, yeah.
It was great. She had some really good points to make. They devalue everything else. They're awful use of space.
Right.
My architecture drafting professor had a royal rant, and he always used Walgreens as an example. Okay. Because no matter where they build a Walgreens, they always just take the territory and they just level everything, flat grade, and they just cookie cutter. The same Walgreens they built in Palm Beach, Florida, they're going to build in North Carolina. They're going to build it wherever.
True.
Even if the North Carolina, the mountain goes like this, and they're still going to just grade everything like a huge wall, like unbelievably huge wall, and like another huge wall, and just build the one that they designed for Florida. It's like, are you serious? Like, don't you realize that for like 8,000 years, the deer have walked on that spot, and like you could have built your building in a really nice looking parking spot. You could spend 20% more on the design and have a building that costs half as much to operate. Wow. Tell me if that makes sense or not. I think it does make sense. You can spend about 20% more on intelligent design, and maybe another 15% extra on renewable energy technology, and then your building costs this much in regular operating costs. I mean, you still got to maintenance it, but
like any house. But there's a lot of energy uses you could get, from like the sun or geothermal from the underground. Like, I
think in California soon it's going to be required all new construction to be solar powered. Okay. And it's like, it sucks that it took that long, but I understand the market needed to mature. But now we're there. If California can do it, the rest of us can do it too.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, we're in the same, latitude as like Germany.
You know what? And we get so much better sun than Germany.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. I don't know about the latitude, but I was going to say that...
Or I think Ohio is something like that.
Ohio, you're right. I was going to say, because we're not up that far anymore.
Yeah, that's spurred my mind, yeah.
So we're in Winston-Salem, and up the mountain in Boone is where I went to college.
Oh my God, there's 2 Ryans there.
We're doing an interview right now, Chris. So I'll introduce my friend Chris, and he's awake. But I was going to say that in Boone, there's the same amount of solar radiance than there is in Germany.
Oh, okay.
And Germany is one of the leaders in the country, or leaders in the world of adoption of solar PV. They're doing it better than almost any other country. Mm-hmm. And if they can do it, so can we.
Like like half of their power is from solar?
I think it was at least 30% last time I checked.
Yeah,
And they're doing great.
Which pales in comparison to America, like 1 to 2% or something, like not even. Maybe.
Right, it's terrible. And you know what? Like, Boone has an average sun hours of like 4 hours per day, and it's not that great. Winston-Salem has, I think it's 4 or 4.5, and then it's 5 hours of sun here. It's just it's not that bad. There's a lot more sun south of here too.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, if you cover the entire South with solar panels, like
it's funny.
I mean, that's completely viable though, or just Arizona or New Mexico or Texas.
If you did wind turbines down the whole part of the what do you call it, Tornado Alley?
Oh, right, yeah.
If
in
you
Oklahoma?
did wind turbines all the way down the central part of this country, you could power the whole country.
Yeah, damn, that's a great idea. Wow,
it wasn't my idea.
Right, yeah, but still, it's an idea that exists that would I haven't heard that before, but that's genius. I'm always trying to think about energy storage. I know Bill 9 came up with an idea once about just building giant holes that you can use solar or wind, energy and then you basically fill the hole up with water. You run the energy to pumps and you fill this up, and then you have a giant piston on top kind of thing, and a giant weight essentially. Mm-hmm. And then when you want to take the energy out, you just let the locks off of it, and then it pushes the water down and pushes the water out. It turns the turbines, energy in and energy out.
I was just telling someone about how microhydro can be used as electric energy storage the other day. That's really funny.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that sounds I know people have done it successfully. I mean, it's people are like, oh no, we don't have enough way to store the extra power when there's not enough renewable energy. And it's like, that's not true.
This is completely not true.
There's like 15 different ways you can store kinetic energy for future use.
Flywheel batteries, right?
Yeah, I've seen a company even take a big crane and just take their excess power and just lift heavy objects with it. And then when they needed to generate power on a slump, they just dropped some of their heavy objects slowly into the pit.
That is genius.
Just generated a lot of power.
Yeah.
And it's like, when it's that easy, why aren't we doing it?
Yeah, for real.
Seriously, it's just like
is that just hydraulics?
Is
that hydraulics?
They're using an electric motor to winch it up.
Oh shit! Okay,
and they're just generating with the regen.
God damn it!
Slowing it down on the way down. It's so dumb how easy it is.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I was making that way. I was coming up with the same idea a few months ago and like making it way more complicated than that. Just like I had people at gyms like lifting weights and like spinning motors or something. I don't know.
That's
it was
funny.
I mean like, but I do like the idea of like human power type of stuff too. Like apparently like a human being can generate like 100 watts like an hour. I think it is.
The average human, can do like Lance Armstrong can generate like 550 watts per hour, but he's juiced, so he's not a regular human.
Yeah,
I think other pro cyclists do like 350. Watts, maybe 400. Strong regular cyclists could be like 200, 250 watts, and then like a typical regular person biking is like 100 to 120, 150 watts per hour.
Damn. Wow. Okay.
But a human can easily, if you go really hard, that's more than a horsepower in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's why you have so much torque to get going at low speeds. You just can't do that for an hour straight.
Right. Yeah.
Lance Armstrong can, but the rest of us can't. So
yeah.
Lance Armstrong is 2/3 of a horse. That's ridiculous. Maybe that's why he takes, what is it? He doesn't take horse tranquilizers or something else?
Some kind of steroids of some kind, yeah, for sure.
He used to come to our area to train. He used to ride up and down the highway 421 up to Boone. And apparently he had like a whole pack of Subarus and they would go up and down the mountain.
But, I mean, proves the point though. I mean, like, if there's a bunch of people taking steroids anyway and we can't stop them, at least put them on bikes and have them generating electricity.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, like,
don't waste it.
Like, it's a waste of good steroids, really, like, there's, I mean, how many people are on methamphetamines? Like, just put them on bikes. Like, god damn it.
Take these people who are tweaking on meth and just give them a crank. Just crank on this all day long.
Yeah. Give them something to do,
you can do something good
Put
for
some
society.
Focus,
Just crank on
I'm saving the world
day.
right now.
Yeah.
I'm saving it.
Instead of like
just
getting
believe
hurt.
it.
Yeah.
Just believe you can.
It's funny. Hey Chris, want to come introduce yourself?
Yeah, we're doing a podcast.
We're doing a little interview podcast thing. So this is my roommate Chris. He's a good friend of mine. He moved here from Boston about a year ago, and I call him the Elf Guru because I was given one elf for free. Now that happened to him 5 times.
Hello.
So he's got 5 elves.
What's going on, Chris?
He's got a couple elves in the background.
Good to meet you, man.
I love your tattoo, bro.
Right on, yeah, Popeye.
Yeah, man, my nana loved Popeye, man.
Oh, hell yeah. Nice.
You want to say hey to the people?
Hi.
Real life colliding with the podcast world now.
Yeah, right.
That's how
what
it
it's
works.
about, yeah.
I didn't even know this was going on.
Me neither. Well, I knew I was going to do it. We just decided to come do it here because it's nicer out.
So what type of podcast is this now? Just curious.
E-bikes and more.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you're having the interview behind a broken elf, so.
Yeah, we got this broken elf. We got this one. We got that one's not broken. The red one drives. I got my bamboo bike off in the corner back there.
Yeah, you can see it like right
And then
here.
in front of that one, I've got a linear recumbent. That's awesome. It's got an electric front hub on it. And then just a bunch of woodworking projects around here. And I got my bike tools and the electronic tools here too. So.
Yeah.
I am the elf guru.
So you work on the elves and things too, man?
Yeah, so I started collecting elves about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, this back. It just led one thing to another. People kept giving them to me for free.
Nice.
Like my first one's covered up over there, and that one's my 5th one.
Huh. Okay. Damn.
That one's my newest one. That's the only one we've fixed so far.
The other 4 need to get fixed still.
The other ones require a lot more work.
Right.
And us to actually create parts that we no longer have access to.
Right on.
So, like, our goal with the elf is make it better than what it was.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, so many people depend on these elves. Like that one over here. This one was actually the first one ever made, like one of the first ever made.
Huh. Okay.
Almost turning 10 years old now.
Yeah.
And the woman still depends on it.
Wow. Okay.
She has it.
Well, she hasn't driven it in a year.
She hasn't driven it in a couple of years, but she wants to drive
she
it.
would prefer to drive it over her Volvo. It just doesn't drive. So.
Yeah.
So she's
from Winston Salem here?
She lives in Durham-ish, kind of where they built it area.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
We do pick up and drop offs with our bus now. So.
Yeah.
So do you put like better solar panels on them or like
everything?
So in a nutshell, yes. Okay, so we do elf replacement parts, but we don't sell what they used before. Everything we sell is just as good as possible.
Better.
A lot of times it is an improvement because, for instance, the motors that they use in the elves, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They're good motors.
Yeah.
The controller itself is a Kelly. It's not bad. But since 2013, that was the best controller they could find.
Okay.
But now what we do is we use the base runner, the phase runner from Grin Tech. They're Grin Technologies in Vancouver. Some of the parts that he came to pick up some parts from Ohio. That's where we're getting a chance to meet.
Yes.
From Grin. There's a couple hub motors from Grin as well as a couple batteries.
Okay, and those are Vancouver?
Yeah, so Grin Tech's based in Vancouver. They started out by making what's called the Psychoanalyst, which was present in a lot of elves. It's the hands down, it's the best, most advanced e-bike computer. It's way more than a handlebar display, and it's funny. I just tell customers it's the best handlebar display you'll ever find. And they're like, well, it looks a little clunky. I said,
is that the one that you were showing me that like smoothed out that one bike that kept like pop wheeling?
Yeah, I told them there's a bike in our shop with a Cyclone 3,000 watt hub mid drive on it. And every time I hit the throttle, the front of the bike came off the ground. It was like eating up the derailleur and stuff. The students at App State, they fixed up the tensioner and stuff, but they couldn't. It was almost unrideable because it had so much torque. And so I just did the throttle pass through on the Psychoanalyst, where I smoothed out the throttle input and I limited the power. So I made it run at like 300 watts, and it could actually ride it without just popping wheelies all over the place. And so what I was going to say is the Psychoanalyst, it's the most advanced, detailed, like data analoging device for e-bikes under the sun. When I tell customers that, they start to get like a little confused and they're like, oh, I don't know if I need something that advanced. So instead of telling them all that, I just say, this is the best thing you can do for your e-bike. Just trust me on it. If I tell you everything it does, we will never finish this conversation.
Just strip it all down. Here we are. This is what it is. This is what you need. Let's do it.
Yep. So what you do is you take your throttle input, which normally just goes from 1 volt to around 4.5 volts or 4 volts, and the throttle will just go whoop, whoop, and it goes into the Psychoanalyst first. And so then there's all these programmable parameters you can set: how fast the throttle signal goes up and down, the max power, the pedal assist, how many levels of pedal assist, regen, top speed, cruise control, all this stuff you can set, and then the throttle signal comes out. Then it goes in the controller. That makes it so much simpler and just much more refined experience. You get pedal assist, you get torque sensing pedal assist, you can even measure the solar input separately from the output. So it's just everything but like lighting controls is there.
Wow.
And so that plus their controllers. Their controllers are really good. They're made by ASI, and then Grin works with them special. They manufacture their controllers, I think, and then they do their own firmware. So you use the Phase Runner software setup suite, and then you take this controller and you mate it to the existing motor that you have, whether it's a new motor or the old one. Both of the ELF motors, now we figure out how to mate them to the Phase Runner. And so what you do is you mate the whole wires together, make sure you get the colors right, and then you mate the motor to this controller through the software setup, and you get so much better results. I mean, we can put a Phase Runner in an ELF, and the motor makes less noise. It's weird, because it's instead of a sine wave controller, it's called FOC, or Field Oriented Control. I have no idea what that means, other than it's a different way of functioning. It's a different way of sending pulses into the motor than the typical sine wave or modified sine controllers. And so when you go, me and Chris know this now, when you put the phase runner in an elf, it's quieter. You start out smoother, and then it goes, ooh, and then it just goes. Because the elf originally has this clunking noise. It's like, go, 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 and then and it just keeps going. But with the phase runner, it's literally quieter.
Yeah, the motor, the
cool.
Kelly controllers make the motors sound really noisy.
They really intelligently roll on the power at low speeds. And there's a couple other electrical reasons why they're more efficient at lower speeds. They also do a really nice job of regen. So not a lot of controllers allow this, but one thing is you can set the top. You can set the max voltage for the regen. So if you have a 48 volt battery, you don't want to overcharge that battery. If it's all the way full and then you go down a mountain, there's a really good chance you might overcharge it. You might have a thermal event. You might ruin your battery, and I've seen that happen. So the phase runner, it's great. I was at the Sun Trip 2017, and no, it was the 2019 one. I was at the Sun Trip 2019, and they go, all right. Now, everybody, make sure your batteries aren't full, because we were at the top of the huge mountain. And they said, if your battery's all the way full, you need to just make sure you discharge it some, or just turn it off. Just turn off your motor system when you go down the mountain.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to overcharge your batteries. So I was over there all happy that I used my phase runner, because I've got that intelligent regen max.
Oh, wow.
max
So it
regen.
stops it at that point.
It will not only does it stop, it will taper off, just like a charger.
Oh,
so
wow.
if your max charge is 54.5 volts, and you set that, it'll actually do constant current, constant voltage-ish type of stuff. It will do the 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever, however many amps of regen that you programmed it to allow in, and it will taper off to 0 through half of a volt. So like
wow.
54 to 54.5 volts, it'll taper off the regen, nothing.
Nice.
It's awesome. You can also set like a regen limited top speed, which is excellent on an elf, because we both got our elves up to like 50 miles an hour, and I know other owners have too, and it's fun, but it's pretty sketchy.
It's terrifying.
It's awesome to do every now and then. But it's
seen
sketchy.
his elf,
it's super sketchy.
If you've seen his elf,
you don't want to get
off the
don't
cover.
Let the handlebars get
It's
away
just
from you.
His is cracked in like 5 or 6 different places.
It's exciting though.
So as you're going down the mountain, the whole thing's like, oh my god.
So
no
I would say,
right?
no
suspension.
You got to pick a smooth road, or else that's not fun. But with that regen limited top speed, I like to limit it about 30, 35 miles an hour. So whenever you do get your elf going down the mountain, you're keeping your top instead of having to tap the brakes all the time and having them heat up like crazy, which does happen. You got your regen keeping your top speed. So not only are you saving a whole lot of life on your brakes, you're making power. And then
from a different source than just the sun.
When we do take the hub motor and you build it back into a wheel like it's supposed to be, and you put it in the back of the elf like it's supposed to be, then you get regen, you get the reverse button that I've started to wire reverse buttons into the elf.
So originally they didn't have regen?
No. They didn't have regen, they didn't have reverse. They didn't do the throttle pass through the cycle analyst that we do now, and all that stuff. It was an ability that they could have had, but what they did was they took the hub motor and they put a freewheel on it so that when the motor system was disengaged, you could still pedal. So that was the design goal then. The Kelly controller, it does do regen and it does do reverse, and it even has a little buzzer when you do reverse, but that stuff wasn't hooked up. So what we recommend is you take the hub motor, put it in the back, put it on a phase runner or base runner controller on it, and don't use any of the wiring in the elf. Just start over. Some of the elves are great; they work great, but some of them are just total lemons, and they'll kill your battery. I worked on
mine.
That red elf over there, actually in the back corner, fried 3 of my batteries. It fried a battery that I made. It fried the battery I replaced that one with under warranty.
Wow!
And then it fried a 3rd battery that I replaced, and I said, "Man, my batteries aren't good enough. They must suck." And so I gave the third battery. I gave him a different battery from Grin instead of from me. So I thought, oh, there must be something wrong with how I'm building my battery packs. I have to stop making them. So then I fried the 3rd one too. I was like, man, I know the pack from Grin is good. I'm really mad that it fried 3 batteries that I paid for. And so what happened was there's an intermittent shorting problem, not in just that elf, but there's also present in that elf, and it was also present in about 4 other elves we worked on in the past couple of years. So finally, through destroying 3 battery packs at a cost of well over $1,500 to me, And I drove to this guy's house 3 times, by the way. It takes me over an hour to get to his house. And so I drove to his house 3 times under warranty. I was just trying to, because every time we work on an elf, everything we do is over warranty for 1 year. So like 10 months in, he said, Ryan, my elf doesn't work. It's like, So I've been going up to his house. I took his elf back, and that, yeah, in a nutshell, I don't want to diss what the elf is because I'll get in trouble. But,
the elf is cool. The elf is cool, but it needs. The elf is awesome. Okay, the elf has changed my life.
Just follow our lead with the wiring. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. Like
the way we do it now is better.
Yeah, and that sounds like the redesign that you're talking about too. And also, like you were mentioning, like in Europe, they had some different designs that were kind of along this way of thinking, right?
Yeah. So long story short, well, after the elf came out, not long after, there was a company called Pebble.
Better Not Bike.
I do believe they. Okay, they're called Better Bike.
Better Not Bike.
They're called Better Bike, and they made a thing called the Pebble, and they did buy an elf, and I think it is a little bit similar to the elf. There's some design similarities, and there's actually a new version of the Pebble coming out soon. So though they don't make the elf anymore, and there's no plans to make any that I know of.
Where are they located out of?
Now Pebble is based in Massachusetts, ironically. So
nice.
About a year,
Boston.
Maybe just under 2 years ago now. So a lady gave me her elf for free. It was the Kickstarter elf number 37, and she gave it to me for free. She said, I have to come up to Massachusetts to pick it up. All right. So she said, Ryan, if you don't come pick it up, I'm going to put it on Craigslist. After a couple months of talking,
just gone in.
I said, oh man, I really want that elf for free. So I drove up and I got it. And it was so weird. She lived in Greenfield, Massachusetts. And then I looked on the map because I knew that Pebble was from there. So I looked and I was like, man, it says Pebble is in Deerfield, Massachusetts, and they're only 10 minutes away. So it was weird at the beginning of the virus. I drove all the way up to Massachusetts. I got my orange elf in the back, and then I just had an orange elf on my truck, and I just drove over to Pebble. There's nobody home because it was the virus. But I told myself, I was like, I'll come back here one day. I'll eventually get in touch with Pebble. It'll work itself out. So the second time I go up there, same thing happened. We called. We got their answering service, but we never really got in touch with them. The virus, I really think threw things off with them, and so.
So what's the design though? Like what?
Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I do know that we've been doing tiny bit of correspondence with Pebble, and that we're talking about they are going to bring their new Pebble out in the market. They're going to satisfy all their orders with it, and they're going to start selling it. It's now it's going to be made in Holland.
Okay.
By a company that they're contracting with. The company that they found to contract to make the elf, Pebble, not elf, is I think they're pretty well. I think they're pretty experienced. I forget what else they make. I think they might make like shells for campers or something. Huh. So they're pretty well set up to actually manufacture it. So they took the Pebble design and they updated it to where it could be more easily manufactured. And so when the new Pebble comes over, we are actually hoping to help with that a little bit. Maybe stock some replacement components, do some service on the Pebble, maybe have a demo Pebble here.
Yeah,
people can come by
to have one
and try it out before they buy it. I mean, we're really interested in helping them out. They seem really easy to work with, and Kevin, Phil, and Nevin, they just seem like they have the right attitude, and it's a cool vehicle. It's pretty similar to the Elf.
What about that company in Vancouver you're talking about that has the replacement parts for that? Do they build anything?
All right, so then in a nutshell, so Grin Technologies, Vancouver, started by this genius named Justin, and he made the cycle analyst. He basically dropped out of grad school. He was like, I got this thing to do. It's really important. I gotta do it. I gotta do it. I just gotta do it. I gotta do it. And he just did it.
Nice.
And everyone's happy he did. The Cycle Analyst came out in 2006. That's their flagship product.
Nice.
And ever since then, they've just been doing the Cycle Analyst. That was their core thing for a long time. And then they started importing lots of motor components for people because people on Endless Sphere, this is a forum for people who build electric bikes. And so this is all happening 2006 to 2010, 2012. All these people, they had this need for really nice components. So Grin, what they were doing is they're importing Crystal Light hub motors. They're importing a controller that they collaborated with Infineon. It's called the Grinfineon. And that's a great controller. They don't even sell it anymore because the base runner and the phase runner are so freaking good. But they import all kinds of stuff. They import everything you need to build an e-bike, and then increasingly, so they did the cycle analyst, but now they do other stuff too. They made their own battery pack that's unique on the market because you can take it on an airplane. It's called the LIGO. They have the charger that they make called the Satiator. Is the best charger I could ever find. It's as good as a charger as the Phase Runner is a controller. It's just what they do is they made the cycle analyst because nothing out on the market was even remotely good enough. Not only there's just nothing out there you could use to measure your bike's performance. It's the same thing with the charger. It's like if you want to have one charger to rule them all, then you want a charger that's universal in voltage, that is programmable, that can go different amps depending on different battery packs, that's really safe for any battery chemistry, waterproof. That's you want the Satiator. I mean, I'm sorry, there's no other charger on the market that does everything that it does as smoothly as the Satiator, because it's also got a little screen. It just tells you what's happening. It tells you how many amps and volts and stuff.
And it's
going
programmable.
on. It's programmable. You can make your own custom charge profile. You can charge your battery up to 85% if you want to be like one of those people who takes extra good care of their battery. Or if you're going to store it for a long period of time, you can choose what battery state of charge. They also make really other cool stuff. They make the battery grin, which is like a low-cost battery test system based on the cycle analyst and some discharge banks. And then I'm almost done. They've got some of the coolest stuff. And like you see, we do frames, we do builds, we do repairs, but I know better than to open up the boxes of the electronics. I trust them to do a very, very good job with the internal electronics, so that I don't have to have a crazy understanding of that. I'm pretty familiar with the setup suite on the Phase Runner, because you can get a lot of cool performance features. It's got a virtual freewheeling, so it's basically, it just adds a little bit of power to the motor so you don't feel like cogging when you're not using the throttle. And then it's got field weakening, which makes the top speed go up. So there's that controller. There's just they make the greatest electronics. I mean, there's no other company that I can go to that makes better electronics, especially control electronics for e-bikes.
I like the whole story behind the cycle analyst too.
It's true. I mean, literally, it's a really human thing. It was born out of a need, and a lot of people in the world need it.
For me, the cycle analyst reminds me of if you were in like public schools and stuff, we had a thing called the Alpha Smart, which was like a keyboard with just like one of those LCD screens on it. That's what the cycle analyst reminds me of, is the Alpha Smart. So
it reminds me of like therapy, like psychoanalyst, like
that's what I think of. I think of psychoanalyst. Yeah. I think that was probably a pun.
Because
actually all
when I said it out loud, I felt myself accidentally almost saying.
That's great. All their products, they have these like incredibly clever multiple names. The Cycle Satiator, the Cycle Analoger, the Grinspector, Grinfinion.
And
it's the other one.
It's funny how like the invention, like clever inventions like that seem completely obvious after they're invented too. No one else was doing it. It was right there the whole time.
That's the one I was going to mention is their motor. I think that's what they're proud of right now. It's one of their latest innovations. Right now they're scaling up the motor, so they're producing a lot more of them than they used to.
Nice.
So Justin, same mad scientist genius guy who brought us a cycle analyst. As soon as he finishes something, he's like halfway into the next thing already. But he had this. Originally, they were importing 9 continents motors. They're really nice motors, but they got limitations.
Right.
What they were doing was they wanted to get the benefits of a direct drive motor, but they wanted it to be lighter weight, kind of like a geared motor. So what they were doing was experimenting. Justin started machining stuff in his garage for years. You might not understand. I'm a little out of the loop because they're so far away from here, but I pay attention online. And so they had the 9 continents motor that he was buying, and he was like taking it apart. They noted what was good about it, but then they ended up building some prototype motors with the aluminum core instead of a steel core, and saved a few pounds.
Okay.
And so but they did some tests and found that it wasn't quite as good at shedding heat. So then they invented this stuff called Statorade, which is it's pretty basic. It's just an iron ferrofluid. It's you put like 5 or 10 milliliters inside the motor, in the direct drive motor, and what it does is it bridges the gap, that tiny little gap between the magnets of the stator and the rotor. It bridges the gap between them, so that the heat can
and just
much
like
more
wicks it away.
efficiently transfer the heat.
That's
the problem with the
amazing.
motors is the heat stays in them, and the only direct path out is through the axles.
Oh wow! Okay.
And so the heat, because it's not touching, the magnet's not touching.
Yeah.
So with this iron ferrofluid, you're actually getting the stator and the rotor to touch.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mess up the operation of the motor at all, and it doesn't
Wow.
really mess up its efficiency. But you're allowing the fluid to conduct all this heat out of the motor, and all of a sudden you've got the airflow over the motor. So you've got vastly improved cooling, and I think they came out with Stator Aid before they came out with the Grin Hub.
Wow.
Because they were developing the Grin Hub for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I think after a while they stumbled over the Stator Aid. I think a couple of experiments, they like filled up the whole motor, and then, but eventually this Stator Aid stuff works so good. It dramatically improves the heat dissipation of the motor.
And so,
it's amazing.
say the company's name again. Like, how's it?
They're called Grin Technologies.
Grin, like Grin.
Yeah, and they're called Grin because of the smile you get when you ride an e-bike. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Nice. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Didn't have to look too far for that one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What am I doing right now? What is this?
It's called the electric smile, man. The first time I ever drove an e-bike, I got on it. It was like
electric Kool-Aid
so
acid
hard.
test.
Seriously,
Yeah.
Everybody does it. I don't care how square you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Or
They are a lot
You
of
get
fun.
on an e-bike and you're like, I feel like a dorky kid and I don't care. Like, it's true.
They're
That's where the name
fantastic,
came
man.
from.
Yeah. I scooted around town on one myself over the summertime.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. I just wanted to go faster. It's like the one I have is like locked at 22 miles an hour.
The problem with e-bikes is you always want to go faster.
Yeah.
I had a 15 mile an hour. It was at Lee Iacocca. It was from 1997. It was a little bit before its time. I
Yeah.
call it the General Lee. I don't know if it's bad. But it's designed by Lee Iacocca, who designed the Mustang. So
Okay. Oh yeah,
you gotta
yeah. I knew
remember,
that name.
In 1997, Lee Iacocca was like 70 something, and
Oh, wow,
he
okay.
was, or even in his 80s.
Yeah.
So he was.
But he's a legend at that point.
He was in the demographic of people who buy e-bikes, if you think about it. He was in his later years, and he was probably thinking of a nifty way to get to the mailbox. And I know, because that's e-bikes are great at that,
Yeah,
by the way.
for real. For real.
I've worked on a couple Elfs where the only place they really go is the mailbox. Because, hey, a lot of people use their golf carts for that, too.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
If you think about Lee Iacocca's mindset in the 1950s, yeah, he got the Mustang.
Like,
And if you think about it now,
intermediate, like,
you got this junky
travels.
old lead-acid e-bike. It was actually great. It was 15 miles an hour, but I had a Heinzmann hub motor with metal gears from Germany, and it was just a nice bike. It only went 15, and I always wished it went faster, but then after a while, I realized it's okay that it doesn't go faster. It's for some weird reason I just got comfortable riding it at design speed.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
then, but every e-bike you ever ride, you want it to go faster. 15 mile an hour bike, I definitely want it to go faster, especially with the 20 mile an hour Riesen Mueller I tried out.
Okay.
That bike was so nice, and then you get up to 20 miles an hour, everything stops. Oh god, this is such a letdown. And but it means you get incredible like distance when you're touring. So that's why Sushil's friend Luis, he's able to keep up with the solar bike.
Yeah, you're gonna have to come on the other side.
You know,
too.
because it's so efficient, it only goes 20 miles an hour. And
Wow.
you can go so many miles on that kind of bike. But
Oh,
then,
for sure.
you know, we have bikes that go 30, 35 miles an hour. You still want it to go faster. And we also sell this bike called the Stealth Bomber. And they say it goes 50, but it actually goes like 52, 54 miles an hour. Depending
Nice.
on what road you're on.
Bonus
and
points,
which way
man.
the wind's
Yeah.
going. And I'll tell you what, when you're going on a 50 mile an hour e-bike at 54 miles an hour, you still wonder if it could go any faster.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think that's the problem is going to have to stay.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna make them faster. That's what's gonna happen.
Well, not to interrupt you, guys. I'm gonna go for a walk with my red.
Nice. What's your rabbit's name?
Chungus.
Chungus. Chungus Among Us.
Yes.
We call him Chungi.
You can say
What's
that.
up, dude?
Chris gets lots of attention with his elf, so he
what's up, girl?
sometimes takes a break from that to get a lot of attention with his rabbit. He was a real hit with middle-aged women last night at the bar.
Oh, yeah.
He got photographed like 6 times in like an hour. By the time we finished our pizza, he had
Oh, dang.
taken pictures of like 6 different times.
I'll be back.
All right. See you later, man.
Nice. So this is a
life.
pretty fantastic conversation. I don't know. I'm learning a lot right now.
That's funny. Yeah, I like e-bikes, man.
Hell yeah.
They're the future.
They're the jam.
Yeah, they are. They really are.
Yeah, I think that they are. I think that they are the future as well. Like it's, they're a lot of fun. Everyone knows the form factor, you know, from growing up riding your bike when you were a kid. You know, it's just like riding a bike.
Yeah.
And they are like, I don't know, for applications around town and things, it is just incredibly so much easier and just like, I don't know, less stressful. It's just, I don't know, when you ride the bike across town, it's like it releases tons of probably endorphins and dopamine in your brain, some kind of chemical cocktail that makes you feel amazing. Like compared to being in traffic in a car, you're just like, oh, I gotta be fighting traffic right now in a car. It's an entirely different feeling altogether.
And you brought up another point. I would agree with all that, but I would say driving from Ohio here was probably not bad. It was probably fun.
Yeah.
Different than once you're in the city and you're just doing your thing every day. Like
in the city driving
like from here to go work at like the YMCA or something, or like going to Greensboro, or like maybe that's different. But like for me, I had a job in the north side of town. It was 8 miles away from my house, and everybody drove there. Everybody thought I was such a weirdo for biking there. They used to joke around and call me smelly because I would show up sweaty and like have to change my shirt in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And and they were all jealous because I had the best time on the way to work. They always had to fight traffic and cuss at the radio and like listen to the hyped up guys selling Chevys and stuff. And then I'm like, what? I was taking like through the Renault Gardens. I saw a snapping turtle on the way to work one day because I was going over the stream, and it was like
nice.
When you get on your e-bike, it takes, here's by the numbers, it took me 28 minutes to drive there on a e-bike. It took me 22 minutes to go there by car when the traffic isn't too bad. And it took like 35 minutes on a slow e-bike and like 45 minutes on a regular bike. So regular bike's here, cars here, e-bike is like here. From a bike to a car is a big jump, but an e-bike to a car, you're not going to get there a lot faster in the car, and by the way, you're not going to be in as good of a mood.
Yeah,
so if you drive 22 minutes to the job I had, and you drive 22 minutes back home if you're lucky, that's 44 minutes versus 28 minutes on both sides is 56 minutes. It's 44 versus 56. What the hell can you do in 12 minutes anyways?
It adds up. Yeah.
No, it doesn't, because if you wanted to get the amount of exercise, how much exercise did I get riding my e-bike 8.5 miles to work and back? Okay, I got a little bit less exercise than if it was a regular bike, but not by a whole lot. Contrary to popular opinion, you burn like 35% less calories on an e-bike. So, also known as you burn a lot more calories on an e-bike than driving a car.
100% more than like a car.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You burn infinite more calories driving your e-bike than like wasting away in a sedentary mode driving a car. So, say we're at 12 minutes right now. 12 minutes I wasted riding my e-bike because I'm an idiot, right? No. If I wanted to come home, go back, or on the way home, say I do on the way home, and I actually happen to drive right past the gym, and I did drive past the gym, so I could have done this and it wouldn't have added any time. Drive to the gym, stop, change your clothes, go work out, and then change your clothes again from work or whatever. Even if you don't, going to the gym to get the amount of exercise that I already got on my way to work and back. It takes more than 12 minutes.
Right, and it costs.
It takes about an hour.
I mean, how much is a gym membership? And then, how much is an e-bike?
So you just went from wasting 12 minutes to actually
making money,
gaining like 45 minutes because you're getting your hour of working out in the same amount of time that it took you to get to work and back.
Cost of gasoline, cost of
and
insurance.
The gas. I haven't even got. Okay, the time saving is bullshit. That's what I just said.
Yep.
The saving gas is true. The mental health aspects are incredibly underrated because you know, a lot
you're
of
in your
Americans are
environment,
fucking depressed.
you're like surrounded by nature. Like in your car, you're just like
Yep.
cut off from everything.
A lot of America. I'm from Atlanta, and one
Okay.
of the worst traffic in the nation. It's like
Yeah,
top
definitely.
3 or something.
Yeah.
Like worst
It's
traffic.
like 10 lanes of traffic at some spots.
It's
I think.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
The worst that I ever experienced was I was driving from Sam's Club to my parents' house where I lived growing up, and I was
Yeah.
driving my mom's minivan, and I picked some stuff up from Sam's Club. I think we're going camping, and it took me over an hour to go 1.5 miles. I went
Wow.
through 4 traffic lights, and it was rush hour, and it took me an hour and a half.
Wow.
And I was like, this is wrong, man. I'm driving a 7-passenger van. I'm a 16-year-old, 17-year-old guy, and I'm in high school. My school is like 3 miles that way. My house
Just
is 1 mile that way.
idling.
There's something
Burning
wrong
gas.
with this picture.
Burning
and I actually
gas.
started riding
Hour
my
and a
bike
half.
to college. Yeah, in high school. At the end of my high school, I started riding my bike, and people thought I had a couple screws loose. You know, I get this a lot. I don't know why.
It's just the culture, man.
Yeah, and I wanted someone to do it with me because not like I thought I was gonna die, but I thought maybe if someone did it with me, I would keep doing it. Like I wouldn't just quit.
Right.
So
yeah.
and I asked all my friends, and the only person who would do it was the track star, valedictorian, guy who went to the Naval Academy. We were friends from Scouts and everything, but he's the only one who would do it. And he was like the
Smart
most
guy.
like physically like challenging person I knew. And it was like seriously, like that is what it takes to like bike in
Yeah,
Atlanta
right.
and like not be scared you're gonna get run over. Like none of my friends would do it.
Well,
Except for him.
it's not just the strength aspect. I think it's
No.
like the whole cultural, societal aspect. You know, like that's what you're
It's
fighting.
all in your head. Because
It is.
he was so
It is.
powerful because he knew it was all in your head.
Yeah.
And then he was really physically strong only because
That's
of that.
the main thing that you're breaking in that
Yeah.
scenario. You
It's
know.
ridiculous, man.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it's not ridiculous because that's just how humans are. That's how we like socialize. That's how we interact. There are like given things in a society that you just grow up learning and you take them for granted. And then anybody who bucks the system is like weird. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, like we're going to give you a hard time because this is the group dynamics. This is how we think and, you know, whatever. They don't even realize that they're doing it, essentially. You know, I mean, a lot of times I'll do it and I don't even know that I'm doing it. You know what I mean? But then later I'm like, I look at it, I'm like, oh man, like my whole actions were like based off of like regular functions and traditions and, you know, like how we just, how we perceive things based in, even in the media perceives things. Like, you know, it's,
The way I heard it said really well recently that at the job I was talking about, I worked for an aerospace company for a short time in the model shop. It was really fun. And he's the only other guy in the shop with a couple screws loose like me. Everybody else is kind of like straight nutted or whatever. But he comes over to me, he's like, Ryan, I know people like you. He's like me. He's the other left-handed guy in the shop, go figure. And he goes, people, they give you shit and they laugh at you. I'll tell you how it works. First they laugh at you, then they're jealous, and then they're scared. Like, you know what? I think that you make sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think when you bring something out of your imagination or you know, e-bikes have been around a long time. I know I've met some, like your dad's been building e-bikes like 15 years or something.
oh yeah,
Or longer than
easily,
that.
for sure. Yeah, since I was a kid.
They've been around. There's people doing like, early adopter activities. They're out there.
I remember the old Zap bike
Yeah.
company having the batteries, and you had like a little motor put like directly on your wheel to spin it. You know?
Yeah, rubby.
Yeah.
Rubby friction drive.
Yeah, exactly.
it's
It's like
weird.
it burned up your
Um,
tire, but it worked. You know.
The classic inventor, like Justin from Grin, like he has full-on inventor status. I don't even know what kind of like skunk works, like R&D cave that he had to like make all these products that he's got.
Yeah.
But that's like the first category of inventor. Then there's early adopters, which I would say that I'm an early adopter.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny. There's so many peculiarities between early adopters, like your dad, Mike, who took the Leva course in October. That's where I met him.
Okay.
But we had been talking before, so
Nice.
That's an early adopter. The mindset from those people to the mass market acceptance is so different.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It takes like a certain type of, it's just a crossroads from understanding of like what technology works and like what people actually want to buy and put next to their car and ride it.
And there's two modes of thought on that too. And like you were saying, it took like, 8 to 12 years for people to switch from horses to cars, just because once people realize how amazing cars were, they're like, why would I even have a horse anymore? This doesn't make any sense, you know? And then there's the whole idea of like, you know, it takes a long time for people to transition in other ways, though. I mean, like, people don't generally change that quickly in culture over time either, though. You know, like, back in the day, if you were, like, in the fields farming, you did what your great-grandfather did, and you're going to do what your great-grandson did. No change at all. You know, like, exactly the same thing. Like, you knew that that's what was going to happen in 500 years from now, you know? Like, whereas us, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's like an entirely different kind of a world now, but we're still like basically the same creatures that we were back then too, you know? So we can change fast, and we are going to change fast, but it's going to be painful for a lot of people, I think, too, you know? Because
that's what I was saying. If you try to swim upstream, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And if you just see it for what it is, and you embrace the changes that they're going to help, you know.
Yeah.
This
essentially.
new technology, it's just what it is.
I mean, there's going to be Luddites. It's wired in us to be Luddites in some way until we're like, well, I don't know about it yet. It's not completely proven to me, or
yeah,
like,
I remember that.
I still like doing it the old way, and you know.
So when I first heard about e-bikes, it was in a way where like they had so much promise. Like e-bikes will change your entire life. The whole world should run on electric. It changes everything. I was like, that sounds like so too good to be true.
Yeah, right.
But I see enough benefits to it. I want to try it out because I had a moped in high school. I did a gas-powered chainsaw huffy bike. It was an experiment once. And I've always wanted to mess with e-bikes. So I did the first e-bike for like $600. It was a terrible motor.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun with it. I said, this is everything that my crazy professor said it was. And more. I built the bike and I rode up the tallest mountain I could see. And I didn't think I was going to get all the way up it. And before I even realized, I was like, I'm going to see how far up the hill I get before I have to stop and come back down.
Before this thing just dies.
Yeah, and I got all the way up, and I barely even sweated at all.
Wow.
And I got up to the top, and I could see the bigger mountains. It's like, I'm going to go to that one now. So the next thing you know, I was in Boone, so I go down, and I'm in Banner Elk, and then I'm in Wilkesboro, and I'm just riding all over the place now. It's
nice.
Great. You know, we rode from Winston Salem to Boone now. And I just really got into bike touring. At the end of when I was in, I did a program called Appropriate Technology at Appalachian, and at the end of it was all about renewable energies. It was like a lot of people who graduated went into solar PV. They did sales and other like design work for solar. So that was kind of the track I was on. But I just really, really wanted to apply it to vehicles. I wanted to work with the solar vehicles. I was around the solar car team, but I never really joined it. Just because I wanted to work on something more closer to reality for me. Like after I finished college, I wanted to still mess with it. I didn't want to work on the solar car and have to say goodbye. So I built the e-bike, and I built a solar trailer that's back here somewhere.
Nice.
And it's funny, I only built the solar trailer so I could park it and charge the bike. And then only after I finished, I realized the bike would charge while the panel is on the trailer and it's moving. That wasn't the point. I didn't think that was practical.
Yeah.
Because it's so heavy and all that. But then I was like, dude, this is so practical. My 100-watt panel gives like 400 or 500 watt hours per day when it's nice out, which is bigger than the battery I had on the bike. It's like, this is like way more circular than I thought. And so the next bike was a touring bike. It was a mountain bike that I built, the same motor, and I put solar panels on the front and back.
Oh, okay.
And I took it to the Sun Trip. And so I had found out about the Sun Trip. There's these crazy guys in France, and at that point they had just rode from France to Kazakhstan.
Wow.
And then they did France to Milan and back, because I think politically they were going to do France to China, but that it didn't work out. In 2010, the founder Florian did France to Japan. He took a ferry to Japan. Everyone asked that.
Wow.
But he did a solo trip from France to Japan on a solar-powered e-bike, 2010. Wow. And he said,
that's insane.
Everything he says sounds epic because his English is his fifth language. So every single thing he says just sounds like out of a movie. So he goes, he said, somewhere in the steppes of Mongolia, I was alone, and I had a thought that other people would want to do this too. It's like, of course. And so they organized a Sun Trip 2013, and they rode to Kazakhstan.
Wow.
In 2015, they did France to Milan, and then 2017 rolled around, and they did a new concept. They did a 2-week tour. That they decided that more people would sign up for that, and they were right. So I signed up for a 2-week version.
Nice.
It was just a 2-week tour.
How long was the regular version?
However long it takes to get from France to Kazakhstan.
Got
2 or
it,
3
yeah.
or 4 months.
Yeah.
Europeans, they get more time off of work.
That's
so
true, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's ridiculous, man. These people, and I found out, it's not just that they're Europeans. Like, to take a solar e-bike across 2 continents, you definitely have to have a couple screws loose. So I think that I kind of found my people when I went over there.
Nice.
Yeah, and I only did 2 weeks. My bike broke down like a couple times. We ended up building an entirely new bike in the middle of the trip, and it was just like the best attitude. And it was like, my bike broke down. Florian, can we just throw it in the truck? I know, I'll help you set up the organization and whatever. I just don't feel like going back to America yet. And he was like, oh no, go to Olivier's house. I was like, what does that even mean? I didn't know what anyone was saying. I was speaking in French, so I showed up at this guy Olivier's house, and I shit you not, we had nothing. My bike was completely trashed. And, the drive belt snapped, and I couldn't get another one. And so the batteries were kind of messed up. And so somebody just drove up out of nowhere. They brought an e-bike. Thanks. And then put a battery on it. Someone loaned me. I was like, thanks. And then we took the trailer that I borrowed at the beginning of the trip. So already thanks.
Yeah.
And then I took my solar panels off my bike. And then Olivier... It was great, and we were about to put the organization tent up to work because it was raining, and then we're sitting there. His wife made some really nice food, and we're sitting there, and we made my plan. Everyone's like making my plan for me because I don't know French at all, and then they're like, "Okay, Ryan, we're going to do this." I was like, "Okay," and then the only guy who spoke English was like, "I'm gonna go back away now." It's like, "Oh, okay." So I have no idea. I can't really communicate with these people very much, and I'm just gonna go with it. They said we have a plan. It's like, great. So as soon as we come outside, the weather miraculously it went from like crappy to like perfect, and we're like, huh, nice. So we don't have to put the tent up. And then we're like, well, how are we gonna put the solar panels on the bike? We had the e-bike, we had the trailer, we had the new battery, everything was set up. We just didn't know how to put the solar panels on.
Yeah.
And like if I was
Is that where the trailer was invented, or?
So yeah, that's when we did ski bike. So he goes into his garage and he looks up. And there's a bunch of Nordic skis. In the winter in Grenoble, wait, they taught me how to say it. Grenoble.
Some kind of Klingon?
That's how they say it. Grenoble. It's spelled Grenoble, but that's not how you say it. Say Grenoble.
Granola?
He sat me down and showed me the bluest cheese in France, and he sat me down for like 45 minutes telling me how to do the...
Oh my God!
Both of our bikes are
That's
broken
gotta
down.
Be acquired.
Sitting there. But anyways, we had my bike all built except for the solar, and we ended up. He took me to the bike shop. It was a ski shop, and they gave us a bunch of old skis, and we just cut them up. It was
nice.
awesome.
Mounted them on there.
Yeah, we used like 3 or 4 skis. I had a carbon fiber ski in the middle. Had some Nordic skis on the sides, and we cut another one up for the slide supports, and that was probably the most lightest weight yet most functional solar rack I've ever had. Like, I've built multiple other types of solar racks. My first solar rack was like flax fiber. I've done wood racks. I've done aluminum racks. I'm wanting to do more flax fiber racks.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, there's been generations of people advancing ski technology to be
awesome.
as light as possible.
Perfect. Everybody was like, they were kind of jealous of my bike after, because it was a little bit wider than the regulation, but they let it fly. It was like 44 inches wide. I had 300 watts of solar. My bike was always completely full by like 12 o'clock, and like if I stopped at any point, I would just not get any power because my bike was 100% full. So what I did was, my friend Sushil, who actually just did a 7,000 mile ride across the U.S. on one of our bikes, that's where I met him on that trip. So I was on ski bike, and his bike wasn't charging very well, and it was cutting out a lot. So what happened was, my bike had so much extra power that I was charging my battery, and then his would get to like 30%, and it would switch, and I would actually recharge mine while I was riding, because I was making more power than I was using.
Wow.
And then his would go down, I would switch again. And we actually did 3 or 4 days like that. My bike was sufficient to power both bikes. It was amazing.
That, I mean,
so I went from like in one year, by the way, 2016 I started, and so by the time I got back from the Sun trip, it was like I went from like wanting to build a utility trailer to like trickle charge my e-bike that I like riding around the mountains, to like having this integrated system that is right now I have the long tail cargo bike under development. So it's just my like same concept of a touring bike with the solar panel racks built into the back. So 3 or 4 panels on a bike like that, and you can do, on the battery alone, you can do 75, 80 miles a day. But if you do strategic, fast charging with the satiator and you have a good sun, you can do 150, 200 miles a day on a bike like that. And that's unbelievable. From a decent sized battery pack, you can do 150 miles a day on a regular sized battery pack.
It really is. I mean, like, we have the technology to create vehicles that produce more power than they use. Let's just say that.
I'm
right?
trying to think of the record. So the Sun Trip 2020. Oh yeah, sorry, I agree with that.
And yeah. I mean, like, and that's just homemade stuff. I mean, if we optimized it, I mean, we could,
It was over 400 kilometers a day. So, anyways, the Sun Trip 2015 was to Milan and back. 2017 was the 2-week tour around the Alps where we did like 1,000 kilometers, I think, something. And then the 2018 was the France to China. Now, Justin from Grin actually did that one, and a couple other people I met from 2017 did it. And
Okay.
that was the big trip. That was like 9,000 miles.
Shoot.
And it took them 3 months to finish some of them.
I bet.
And it was unbelievable. My one friend Peter did it, and he said it just took everything he had. Even his trailer
Jesus.
broke, and he had to leave it in China and the Gobi Desert, do the rest of the thousands of miles without his trailer.
Like, I can't even
it's
conceive
unbelievably
of
hardcore.
like this world.
They showed me a picture of a bathroom in Kazakhstan, and there's just like so much trash piled up all the way to the urinals, like in every stall that everybody just uses to, like, they just go outside.
No.
It's like unbelievable scenery that people are showing me in like Western China. They'll serve you chicken feet, it's weird stuff. Weird, different world.
Right.
But so then they did the Sun Trip 2021, and that was an amazing amount of miles, a similar amount to the 2018. But I think the difference is the guys who came in first and second place both had solar velomobiles. They had nice looking European velomobiles with a ton of solar on the top.
Okay.
And the winner did, I think he averaged over 400 kilometers a day.
Wow.
Which is like well
Okay.
over 200 miles a day, and that's his average.
Yeah. Dang.
So that's unbelievable to me. To do 100 miles on a regular bike, you have to be extremely fit.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to not have any equipment. And people who do, okay, maybe some people would argue with that. If you're doing 95 miles a day and you're bike packing,
That's a
dude,
long way.
congratulations. Not everyone can do that.
No.
Not everyone can handle that. That's
Over
hardcore.
200 a
But
day.
if you get a solar e-bike, oh man, it's like plugging your guitar in. You put the same amount of effort into the pedals, and you go so much farther. And it's just exciting because you still get the experience of the bike. You're going a little bit faster.
This is not Grandpa's guitar anymore.
Yeah. You're like, I feel like when I'm on my e-bike, I'm like Bob Dylan pissing everybody off at his first electric concert.
You are a folk singer.
Because in the e-bike, you would think that like motorcycles would be your bro, and they're not. You would think like cyclists would be your bro, and they're not. And then you would think people with Priuses would be your bro, and they're not. And people with Teslas seem to think it's cool.
Completely segmented.
But like it's so weird. Like
Yeah.
everybody has their own niche. So yeah, there is such a
That's
thing
true.
as an e-biker. They value utility, and
same thing when it comes to like left-leaning politics. Everyone's just completely segmented in their own ideology.
Yeah, it's
like it's like we're all trying to do the same thing, guys. Like let's.
I was trying to like share my attitudes with the fellow person who I would consider another Democrat, or
Right.
I'm independent, but I lean pretty Democratic.
Right.
And and I really pissed her off. I was like, man, I'm just trying to have a conversation here.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Sometimes I talk to some Republicans.
It gets personal.
And I apologize in advance. I say, look, I know we don't agree on stuff.
Right.
Well, let me just say some stuff. And then
Yeah.
after a while, we're just talking,
That's
It's funny if you don't
all
do
it
that.
is. Yeah.
Sometimes you can really... I talk to someone who I think that we're aligned with, and I don't give them that disclaimer first. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, no. Yeah. But that's one thing, though. that's the other side of the e-bike thing, is that there's no crowd for e-bikes except for e-bikers. E-bikers are everyone. E-bikers are people
True.
in our parents' demographic. There's people in our demographic. There's people who are low income who fucking love their e-bikes.
Yeah.
There's people like Chris who are disabled and they can't. He could get a driver's license, but practically he's a little bit intimidated by the process.
Yeah.
And he's got scoliosis. He's got like a taxi. He got hit by a taxi, so he walks funny.
Oh man.
And he, when you say disabled, you think of someone in a wheelchair, but you don't think of someone who looks completely normal, sounds completely normal, struggles with autism, has all this stuff going on with his body, and he hates two-wheel bikes and he doesn't want to drive a car. And until he got an Elf, he had no way. He was riding like sun trikes, like these are like three-wheel trikes, and he really liked those. But the Elf changed his life, man.
Wow. Now, so you don't even have to have a driver's license, right? Like, it's just a bike, essentially.
Yeah, the Elf is literally a bike. The one thing about it is the e-bikes are supposed to use less than 750 watts, and the Elf uses a lot of watts to get up to power. But I don't see Joe Biden cracking down on it anytime soon.
No.
Most other e-bikes, they peak. That's the other thing. Bosch does it too, though. They say 250 watt bike, and that it'll peak at 500, 600, 700 watts.
Right.
The government doesn't care about peak power; it just cares about continuous power, and they don't really regulate it much.
Yeah. Because in the scheme of things.
You know what? Europe really tightened down. You can get a 30,000 euro fine in France for having an e-bike that's too fast.
Huh.
So I actually,
damn.
the bike that I brought to France, now if I brought it back, I could get a righteous ticket. I could get thrown in jail even.
Whoa.
Because my e-bike went 35 miles an hour.
Wow.
And their limit is if you convert a bike or if you build your own, it can only go 15.5 miles an hour, 25 kilometers an hour. If you want your e-bike to go up to 45 kilometers an hour, 28 miles an hour, you have to get it type certified. So you have to buy a bike from a company like, I have a Stromer here. Yeah, Stromer, Reese and Mueller, like all the companies who are based in Europe who spent all this time and energy to get their bikes type certified. They're really similar to mopeds. It's got different rules, Germany and all this stuff. So, but they're so strict over there. I met a guy who lives in Switzerland, and he said he has a really, really nice bike called a Speed Ped. I've never seen it on the internet. It's a word of mouth type bike. Very low volume bike. Has a belt drive. Really nice looking bike. There's a custom motor on it.
Huh.
And he said every time they're really strict in Switzerland. They're so strict. And there was like a traffic camera, and he was going like 48 into 45, and he was getting tickets. He was going through this one spot like again and again on his commute, and he was getting written up and getting tickets for going like 49 into 45 Ks an hour, 49 Ks an hour into 45. So he just took his license plate and he like mounted it like a different way where you could still see it, but like the camera couldn't see it.
Nice.
So like, but in America we don't have that going on at all.
No, it's pretty much. We're allowed to.
It's supposed to be 20 miles an hour, 750 watts with a certain amount of weight or whatever. And then in America, it's generally accepted where you can have those speed pedelec bikes from Europe or anything that goes as long as it's less than 30 miles an hour when it's pedal operated. So when it's throttle only, it can only go 20 miles an hour. But when it's pedal assist, it can go up to anything in America over 30 miles an hour is considered a motor vehicle. And so if you're going over 30, you can get pulled over and technically maybe get a ticket. But under that, if you're doing pedal assist, you really won't have any problems. I did get pulled over in an Elf recently because it got dark, and I turned around on the Highway 421 to go get something that fell out of it. And I come back, and the sheriff deputy pulled me over. He had no idea what the Elf was. And he was like, "Man, you can't be out here without any tag." And I was like, "Yeah, it's actually a bicycle. This is a highway, but it's actually not an interstate highway. So
right.
I am allowed to cycle on it because there's side roads and everything." And he was like, "Well, I'm trying to do you a favor because the state troopers up there, if they see this." And I was like, then they'll probably know what to do because they're state troopers. They're probably not going to give me any problems at all.
Yeah, so right.
He was like, if I were you, I'd go up to that Dollar General and see if someone would come pick you up. And I was like, officer, he had said, I see where you're coming from. I said, if you see where I'm coming from, you see that I came from Winston Salem. And I biked 86 miles already, and I'm gonna do the last 14. I'm gonna do it unless you stop me.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And it's funny because people act so worried when they don't know. If that guy biked in any regular capacity, then he wouldn't be so like uptight about what I was doing.
Well, and that's what you were saying earlier too. Is that like they'll make fun of you, and then they're afraid of you later. You know. Or they make fun of you, then they're jealous, and then they're afraid, right?
Well, a lot of cops are just people who want to make sure that other people don't have as much fun as they have. Lame.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms that is not
sure.
exciting enough for this podcast.
We'll turn it down.
Reform the police.
As subject
Because if
matter.
you just take the money away, then the police will still drive around, but they won't have their badges. They'll just like pull you over and be a dick anyways. And but then they won't have their badge, so then they won't get in trouble. You know, you can't take their money away because then all
the cat,
the bullies will still drive around and be assholes anyways. So why don't you just teach them to pull their pistol out less and teach them to be less cocksuckers. And I'm not saying every cop, by the way. I actually talked to a really nice lady cop the other day about diet choices. 'Cause we're at the supermarket, so I'm not talking about all cops here.
No,
just the ego-driven cocksuckers that make it unpleasant to drive a vehicle.
Who are unaccountable due to the police union.
You know what? I actually had someone steal some money from me over New Year's Eve. I was in Macon, Georgia. Okay. And the cops literally told me they just weren't going to send anybody because they just didn't have enough. They didn't think it was important enough to send an officer. I had someone steal $1,100 out of my wallet.
Damn.
I was on a bike trip. It wasn't cash. They took my card.
Oh, okay.
And they took my cards. So it was super lame, and the cops just didn't care at all. You know, I was so excited to come see them do their freaking job for once. Whenever I get excited about, oh man, maybe I get to see them do their job, it's like, no. They show up immediately at the warehouse. The one time I left the door open too long and the alarm went off, man, they showed up like lickety split. Property damage? Oh yeah. Don't you dare try to steal anything from an old rich guy's warehouse. But God forbid that anything personally happened to you or your family. We'll make sure to not do anything. But whenever the domestic violence stuff happens, they're like way on that because they're really quick to throw you in jail. That's the problem, is they only have jail to throw you into. They don't have anywhere good to take you. It's like if the cops they showed up and like, we're going to take you to jail if you're being bad, but if you're being good, we'll take you to the park. Then I would go. I'd be like, sweet, let's go to the park. Or oh, you're not doing so good mentally. We're going to take you to a place where
you'll be better.
There's nice people.
Yeah, right.
And instead of jail, we're going to put you in a room with nice people. And it costs the same as
that would be
jail,
fantastic, yeah.
But then you won't get mad and
look for worse solutions to your problems.
Read the Bible too much.
Yeah. It's all adding up, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of things happening in the old U.S. of A.
Anyways.
Today.
Yeah, this podcast is really about everything, huh?
It's I don't have a lot of boundaries. I'll talk about most things. You've been pretty much keeping it on the straight and narrow the whole time, though, man.
That's fine. I'm usually pretty good at circling back to e-bikes, but, I'm pretty curious myself.
Some cops on e-bikes would be having a lot funner time. Probably would be giving people lollipops and sweet tarts and things.
I think we were talking about ignorant people, and I'm speaking of ignorant people again. I tried to sell the police department e-bikes once at Boone. I tried to sell the police department e-bikes, and I talked to the cop, and he comes back to me. He goes, "Man, I just don't want to get into e-bikes because I don't think my officers will get enough exercise." God, I hate that you think that.
Yeah.
Because he rode an e-bike when he was visiting in Florida, and he thought it was too easy. He's like, wow, that's difficult, man.
It's just too good. It's just too good of a solution. So we're just
a very good answer.
It's just the best solution to all of my problems right now.
The real reason is the bike cops. They're not a novelty, but they're only really useful in densely populated areas.
Right.
And, I think the e-bike would be very useful,
It
especially if you can
could
go up the
broaden their
stairs.
horizons a little bit.
But the thing is, like, I talked to the bike cops in Winston, and it's rare that they ever get into like a speed pursuit, you know. And it's like it's the bike cop or some dude running, and they just tackle him. They just jump off the bike and tackle him.
Yeah.
So if the cop's using the bike like that, then maybe the e-bike's just in the way.
I mean, I could see how that would be an advantage, though.
But I know the cops in Greensboro have electric motorcycles and
shit.
Segways. Lots
Nice.
of cops use Segways, but I know
Yeah.
electric motorcycles are a thing in Greensboro for the police. They have electric buses coming too.
Oh, nice.
They're trying.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, batteries, right? Like, batteries are great, and they're changing everything. They're changing the whole dynamic of transportation. But we're kind of in the same boat as far as resource management goes, with as far as lithium.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about like there's like some new like solid state like hydrogen ideas happening.
There's a lot of great research happening. There's even like perovskite, there's graphene, there's this stuff.
Yeah.
I personally, I don't spend too much time learning about it because I have spent so much time learning about battery cells that I could buy and use.
Yeah.
That until the cell is at the point where I can log on the internet somewhere and buy it, then I try to stay away from too much in my head because you know, in the past I've seen new battery chemistries come and then they never came to the market.
Exactly.
So I thought you were going to go another direction where that it's just a difficult issue with people mining the cobalt.
Right.
That comes from the batteries.
Yeah.
And there's not a great solution to that because those are the best batteries out there right now. But
because I mean that's where Toyota is right now. They said they're not making an all electric vehicle because even if we all went to electric, we don't have enough batteries to even facilitate that right now.
I don't agree with that.
Nor can our grid handle that type of.
There's an abundance of lithium in the Earth's crust. It's very common.
Yeah.
And it's not toxic.
Okay.
There's actually a lot of lithium deposits in North Carolina and Gastonia, and Tesla's got like a 30% stake in the lithium coming out of it.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, but other chemicals that they dope it with, that is extremely toxic. They use cobalt, they use cadmium, all kinds of
rare
stuff.
earth metals.
Yeah, and so my answer to that in the short term is like, there's an older battery chemistry called lithium iron phosphate, and it's the most stable, the longest lasting. It's not the most energy dense, and it's not the least expensive.
Yeah.
But it could have been produced in higher volumes to where the price would have come down to be cheaper than lead acid, and it should have happened, but it didn't, unfortunately.
Huh. Yeah, because iron ore is probably pretty prolific.
Yeah, so lithium iron phosphate is great because the materials that you take to use it are a lot less toxic.
Yeah.
It's more recyclable, and again, you can size it properly where you can get like 8,000 or 10,000 cycles out of it.
Wow.
And a lot of these e-bike batteries on the market are doing 800,000 cycles. That's pretty close.
Damn.
So long term, like if you did build something like an ELF, they originally came with lithium iron phosphate. Consider that.
Exactly.
It's a great chemistry, and the batteries last way longer, so there's some value there for stuff that doesn't have to be super lightweight.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, there are a lot of options too, and we were talking about flywheel batteries earlier too. Like that's what they use to like run like rovers on Mars or satellites in space and things.
Yeah.
They're definitely expensive, but if you produce them in volume, again, like price would drop a lot. I like that idea too, just because the materials are super easy. You're just using weights and motors essentially, like wire wrapping and I don't know what they use for the weights for the flywheel, honestly, but it's just like a vacuum tube and
You ever seen the poop gas bus?
I've heard of things like this.
I was thinking of the flywheel bus.
Yeah.
They have a flywheel bus in Russia or something, but they have a poop gas bus. It's a country in South America. I don't want to get it wrong, but there's a municipal toilet and everybody uses, and then it just collects centrally, and they create biogas from human waste, and then they fill this giant bag on the top of the bus, and it's held down by plywood, and it fills up like this. And then it goes like 3 or 4 feet high, and then the bus runs on the poop gas until it comes back to after the toilet fills up again. It's the greatest thing. It's like, why can't... Man, I'm going to run my bus on poop gas.
Yeah, I mean, I heard there's like different bacteria that they put in like cow shit, like manure on farms that produce methane. Actually.
Yeah, so actually that reminds me, at App State they had this place called Nexus where they do a lot of energy experiments at the landfill.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so they had a biogas generator. One of our tasks was we would go collect cow poop and horse poop it was cow poop and goat poop mixed together because you had to get the right consistency. Because cow poop is too dry.
Gotcha.
So you have to
Okay.
mix some goat poop and some hot water in with it.
Right.
It smells great. And then you put it in the biodigester.
Yeah.
And they have this giant bag fill up.
I wonder why
and
no
then
one's
they
doing this yet. You know.
It's a ridiculous process. You kind of have to make students do it, right? And,
Yeah,
But
right.
then they had this generator that ran on it. It was great. There's a lot of really cool projects there. They had a it wasn't biochar. It was they had biochar there, but then they also had a gasifier that you could run a generator off of.
Yeah.
The same one you could run the poop gas off of. There's really cool experiments in there. So yeah, I did the appropriate tech program, and I just wanted to take it in bikes. I feel like the ELF and the e-bikes are more. What the term appropriate technology means is that the idea that the technology that we make for ourselves to use should be interacted with at a scale of the human, and not bigger. Like I think that my mom's minivan that I use to get stuck in traffic, that 7-passenger Honda Odyssey, it's a great family car, but it is not. It's not appropriate for what I was using it for. I was going to Sam's Club. It was only a mile and a half from my parents' house. It's somewhere that I've since biked much further than Sam's Club from my parents' house, and it's only a mile and a half. It should have only taken it takes me 12 minutes to go a mile and a half in Winston. It should have taken me. In the future, in the next generation, I would love to have seen me take my parents' front loader cargo bike instead of our van. I would have gotten that. I would have taken a dedicated bike lane on the 6-lane road that every month there's a gnarly accident. Every 2 months, Claremont and Briarcliff come together in northeast Atlanta, and every 2 months there's just a major crunch fest. Every 2 or 3 months there's just a really gnarly accident. Some dick is on their phone, and some other guy's drunk, and you know what I mean. And so take a dedicated lane through the side of that, so you don't even have to stop, and let them have their fun in the freaking roller derby, crashing their cars into each other. Go down to Sam's Club, get my shit, put it in the bike back home. Again, away from the majority of the crazy shit circus of the cars.
Yeah. It's amazing that we even drive cars the way that we do now. Anyway, it's such a primitive.
I know that's Yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah.
And I know it's possible because that same intersection that's a crunch fest during the day. I found out that if you go out after 10 or 11 p.m., even in Atlanta, I could go circles in it. I could just. I knew that the life didn't move like that all the time. It was rush hour. Rush hour in Atlanta is legendary.
They get
it
frustrated.
Lasts for 4 hours. It starts 3 p.m. and it goes to 7:30 or 8.
Oh wow!
And in the morning it starts at 7 and it goes till 11.
Yeah.
And then there's a lunch rush. So from 11 to 2:30 or 3, there's all these people driving around trying to get to the lunch meeting, and it's something's got to give, people.
And it does eventually.
Yeah.
And crush.
You know what that caused is a lot of people that I saw and I knew. When you live in the exurb, which is more than an hour from the city, so you live an hour and 20 minutes. So you can have a big house, great. You got your pool table and all this stuff, and all the TV that you saw on TV that you needed, and you come from the exurbs, an hour and a half, you drive in. You could live in a suburb and drive to Athens or Atlanta, depending on which job you got, which is what a lot of people do. And you drive into the city, you work, and you drive an hour back, and you wonder why you don't have there's probably something missing. Probably we are a little disconnected from the community. because you're living and working two completely different. Up until now, it would be unheard of that you worked and lived in such a different place.
That's true.
There's so many people who live in Spain and commute by air to work in London. What the hell is that? And that's a whole different problem with space. But and yeah, it costs too much to live there.
Yeah.
But like, oh my
Oh,
God,
wow.
can we
Right.
figure this out so people can live in near London, ride their e-bike to work instead of riding a goddamn airplane?
Yeah.
What the hell is that? They figured it out in China, by the way.
It's insanity.
You know what? And if China is so evil, they can figure this out. Hey, we can do it too. We
Yeah.
can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're-
make that as a dare. If the bad Chinese people can do it, then hell yeah, we can do it.
And their population density is just staggering.
Yeah, they're actually
too.
needing to do it. They're
Yeah.
at a different pace in their development where they have to take this seriously.
Yeah, yeah. It's they're really like pushed to the limits of what's possible there. So they have to like take every like angle almost, you know. Which, you know, is what it is. It's great that they're doing it, you know. Yeah, I don't know. My brain's kind of fried right now,
Yeah, I
man.
can't think of anything else to talk about.
Yeah.
Want to can it?
Was that the podcast right there?
I think that's a wrap.
All right.
I think we said all the big points.
Yeah, I think so too.
Funny.
I don't know. I'm sure there's plenty more to talk
We'll
about.
do another one in a year or something.
All right, perfect. All right, till then.
Yeah.
Sayonara.
Cool. Well, thanks for everything.
Yeah. And we're out.